Anybody know this guy? Nobody? Anybody ever heard of Minecraft? Anybody ever played Minecraft on the computer? This guy's name is Marcus Persson, and he is the creator, he's the inventor of Minecraft. And not long ago, he sold the properties and rights of Minecraft to Microsoft. Anybody guess for how much money? $2.5 billion. So he is worth some money. We're a little bit ahead. He is worth some money. And upon his early retirement, he decided that he was going to build himself a house to the tune of $70 million. He's going to build a 16-car garage. Of course, if you have 16 places for 16 cars, I would imagine that he has 16 very nice cars. Wine cellar, massive gym, and what impressed me the most was wall of candy in his house. Why do we keep skipping forward? So this to my left are all of these various candies that he has in his home, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm reading his story that it's a pretty good deal until I hear some of the things that he had to say as a result of just this acquisition and this place in his life, because shortly thereafter he sent out the following tweets, and I want you to hear these because it's sort of in line with what we've been talking about over the last 3 weeks. It sounded very Solomon-like to me. He said, "The problem with getting everything is that you run out of reasons to keep trying, and human interaction becomes impossible due to the imbalance you have between one another." He said, "Hanging out in Ibiza with a bunch of friends and partying with famous people, able to do whatever I want, and I've never felt more isolated. Found a great girl, but she's afraid of me and my lifestyle, so she decided to go and be with a normal person instead." This is a picture of life alone. And I think oftentimes you and I, we get to this place where we think to ourselves, if I have this, fill in the blank, if I have that, then I will have meaning, then I will have purpose, then I will have value. And what Marcus is saying is very similar to what Solomon has been telling us over the last few weeks. And what that is basically that the acquisition or the pursuit of more is never enough, because once you get what you want, you move the goal line to the next thing. You never have what you're looking for, because once you get it, you reset the line. And so, as I was thinking about this guy's story, and I was thinking about Solomon's story, and I was thinking about my story and your story, I was thinking about how often we settle for superficial relationships. I think we live in a world where we've never been more connected and less connected all at the same time. I think we settle for, yeah, it's true. I think we settle for Facebook friends without making real friends. I think we watch other people's story on Instagram and Snapchat, and we're so busy watching other people's stories that we forget to live our own. We settle for thumbs up and likes when what we really need is a deeper sense of connection. And then before we know it, days turn to weeks, turn to months, turn to years, and we've created these habits, this world that we live in. And we just keep wanting more. And so this morning, what I want to do with the remainder of time is I want to just look at those verses that Susan just finished reading you from chapter 4 of Ecclesiastes. In Solomon's day, the idea of working hard to leave something behind for somebody, he gives us two examples of basically where one's inheritance would go. Early on, he talks about children, and then he talks about a brother, and he says he has neither. And so he comes to this place in his life where he asks himself, what am I doing? Why am I working so hard and enjoying my life so little when everything I have won't even be passed on to anyone I know? It will just dissipate with my death. What am I doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I think it's a good question for you and I to ask. It's a question that sort of clarifies for us if the path that we're on is the path that we want to be on. Because sometimes we can be traveling down a road and we're unhappy with that road, but we will travel it for a very long time without ever looking and listening and asking ourselves, am I going to where I want to be, or am I headed in a direction that leaves me wanting more? And so in the early part of chapter 4, Solomon writes about this guy who's working so hard. But when he dies, he has no one of any value or meaning to leave his stuff to. And I wonder as I think about that story, what I'm doing in the nature of the relationships that I'm creating. And I wonder as I talk with you about the same. And when he gets to this place in chapter 4, he gives us 3 examples of why life is better to have 2 than 1. Right? He uses this image of 2 is better than 1. And this is what he says. He says, 2 people are better off than 1, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. I think to myself, so in this day, there were no cars, there were no planes or trains or any way in which to travel other than by foot or maybe by horse or donkey or something like that. So in the first example, when he talks about 2 being better than 1, he says, so what happens if you fall one day and you can't get up? There's no lifelock, right? I've fallen and I can't get up. What do you do if you're walking between towns and there's nobody there? Because when night falls, bandits and thieves and those who would wish you harm would come and take what you have and perhaps do harm to you. And if not humans, then savage animals might come. And so what he's saying is, what happens if you're traveling on a journey and you're alone and you fall? Who is there to pick you up? 2 is always better than 1. And then he also talks about lying down and keeping each other warm. What happens when winter comes? This is the first case, so far as I can see it, that the Bible makes for spooning. It's true. And so he says, so what happens when winter comes and you're cold? You don't have any heat. Perhaps you don't have any blankets and you're shivering and you're alone. And then he gets to the third example and he talks about perhaps, being out and about and running into danger. That at least you could have one another's back if someone comes to attack you. And I was thinking about these examples because they're old examples. They're examples from like 3,000 years ago. But there's a point, there's a truth to what he's saying about life together and life alone. And I wondered as I was reading this, who has my back? Who, if I fall, would be there to pick me up? Am I surrounded by people but deeply connected to none? And I wonder if you would just ask yourself the question, do you have 2 or 3 or 4 people that you know that if you fell, that would be there to come and rescue you? That if you were in danger, that with no questions asked would have your back? That when winter comes, when those hard seasons, those cold seasons, those dark seasons, do you have someone who is there? Do you have 1 or 2 or 3 people, or have you just settled for Facebook friends? It's a poignant question because when he talks about how two are better than one. He gives us unique examples, but I wonder, as we're thinking about those, if we can practically apply those to our own lives. Who has your back? Are you traveling alone? Have you spent so much of your time focused on work or other things that you have forgotten to cultivate relationships that are significant, that are meaningful? Because what Marcus Persson says and what Solomon says is that you could get to this place where you have accumulated everything that you thought you could ever want or need, and you would still find yourself traveling alone and empty. And Solomon would say to us, it's meaningless. It is like chasing after the wind or a vapor. There is nothing substantive about it. And I think this is that part in our conversation where we just stop for a second and we think about who has our back, who picks us up. Do they even know that we're hurting, that we're struggling, that we've fallen, that we're in danger, that it's cold, that it's hard, that it's difficult? You say, well, I have some people who would have my back. Yeah, do they even know? Do they know what's going on in your life? And are they helping to contribute to get you to the next place? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves, because Solomon says unless we do, we could be surrounded by a ton of people and still feel very isolated and very alone. You know, the thing that strikes me about all three of the examples that he gives is that all three of those hazards, they're just wildly unpredictable. You never know when you're going to fall and need a friend. You never know when danger is going to come your way. You never know when these seasons are going to come upon you. You don't see them coming. And so the point is, you don't travel alone. And so I think about that as it relates to certain seasons in our lives. It's like you never see the cancer coming, do you? You never see the second miscarriage coming. There are things in your life that you turn a corner and you didn't see coming. They're wildly unpredictable. And that's the nature of the journey we walk. There are fractures that happen in our lives that perhaps other people can see, but sometimes when it happens to us, it just seems like out of left field. Maybe if we'd have been paying more attention to our lives, we would have seen some things coming, but most of the time we don't. It's only in hindsight where we can realize, God, I just wasn't paying attention. All of the things that happen in Ecclesiastes chapter 4, they're just wildly unpredictable, and that's the way our lives are too. We fool ourselves to think otherwise. That's why we fight so hard for control. We want so much to be in control of our lives, and the truth is, it's just an illusion. The only thing that we really control are our responses to the situations that come our way. Most of the situations that come our way, we have absolutely no control over. Anybody know this guy? Probably the chances are equally as good as your answer to the first question. It's Aaron Ralston. If I had a prize, I'd give you one. He wrote a book called Between a Rock and a Hard Place. It was turned into a movie called 127 Hours. Anybody read the book or see the movie? So this dude, I think it was about 2003, went for a hike in Canyonlands National Park in Utah. And during the course of his hike, he was moving through a pass, and an 800-pound boulder was dislodged, and it trapped his arm against one of the walls. And as he sat in the middle of nowhere, dying from dehydration for 5 days, he decided that he was going to take out his pocket knife and amputate his arm, because it was either that or die. And as he was dealing with the reality of losing his arm or losing his life, He wrote the following in his book as he was reflecting back. He said, "There was no search party. No one was looking for me because I was hiking alone. Nobody knew where I was. And it just made me think, how often do I hike alone? You know, metaphorically, how often do I hike alone? How often do people really know where I am and what's going on in my life? It's sobering, really. You know, Marcus's story, Aaron's story, Solomon's story, your story, my story. It's very sobering. I think if Solomon had a bullhorn in chapter 4, he would scream through the bullhorn to say to us, life is just better together. Stop settling for Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and start investing in something really, truly meaningful. Because one day you're going to get to this place where you realize that no matter what you have, if you don't have someone to share it with, it doesn't mean anything. And so Solomon gets to the end and he uses this image of a rope or a cord. And his point is that if two are better than one, then three are better than two. And if three are better than two, then four are better than three. You get the point that to build into our worlds relationships that are deeply meaningful, that's really the point. And if you continue traveling alone, just understand that it's not only going to be dangerous for you, your journey is going to be meaningless. Now, we started with a picture of a guy whose story I told you, and I thought it would be valuable for us to end with the story of some little kids who have a really interesting story and who, if we're willing to learn, will teach us something about the value of 3 being better than 2 or 4 being better than 3. When I heard this story, or when I watched this story, I was really deeply inspired by how kids came around one who really needed their help and what they did to create a community and to create value and to create meaning and purpose. So I want you to watch this and then I'll come back up and close.
We're going to end the week at a school where the students have an important lesson for us all. Here's Steve Hartman on the road.
Ready for cookies?
6-year-old Maury Belanger has a severe hearing impairment, but she's also very much a typical kid. Which is why, when it came time for kindergarten, her parents, Shannon and Matt, were torn. Send her to a school for the deaf?
Yeah, eggs.
Or to the public school here in Dayton, Maine, which was close and convenient.
Okay.
Unfortunately, at the public school, there weren't any other kids like Maury, and support was minimal.
You always think of the bad things, like, are they going to make fun of her or...
Her fitting in.
Thankfully, we made the right choice.
You can guess what they decided. Or can you? Believe it or not, this is Dayton Consolidated Elementary, the public school, where talking like Maury has become all the rage.
You guys practice sign language? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Kids here at Dayton have learned multiple things of sign language, so like door, window, carrot, quiet, funny, sad.
What's that? That's not a sign.
I like to do it.
I like to do it too, but it's not a sign. Obviously, they're not fluent yet. But about a third of the kids here know enough to navigate a kindergarten conversation. Like when Maury didn't notice the line was moving. The girl in the pink told her to walk, followed by the universal sign for, way to go, Maury. And it's not like the administration is mandating this. There is no sign language curriculum. This is bottom-up kindness. Students motivated by nothing more than their own deep desire to connect with this one little girl.
Wow.
What they know, they learn mostly from posters, books, watching Maury's aid, and teaching each other.
They want to do as much as they can for her. We want her to feel comfortable and safe and be able to kind of make friends with her.
It's like if you got a gift basket, that's what she is, a little gift basket. Flowers and chocolate. Just a little bundle of joy.
Eventually, Maury's parents say their daughter may need more support services, but they believe all she needs now is what she has here, a loving community.
To know that people just accept her for how she is, she's just gonna succeed because of being at that school.
There are signs of that already. Steve Hartman, on the road in Dayton, Maine.
Hi, I'm Alex Schultz.
And I'm Andrew Cooper.
In 2015, we took a surf trip to Bali, Indonesia, and saw firsthand just how...
So Maury's disability is that she can't hear. And as a result of not being able to hear, it leaves her in a world where she feels very different, very sometimes alone. And the truth of the matter is, all of us carry with us disabilities. Disabilities that make us feel alone, misunderstood, not valued. And so I thought, as we come to a close with the story that we just finished watching, that we could learn from some little kids about what it means to just be aware of the people around us and the journeys that they travel and the struggles that they have. And if we wouldn't be a little more intentional about finding ways to come alongside and build community where 2 is better than 1, or 3 than 2, or 4 than 3. Because I think to the degree that we are able to offer ourselves in that way, I think it opens us up to being able to receive it back. See, I think when we're looking beyond ourselves, the value or the gift of what happens when we create that space is that other people can give back to us. Because prior to that, we mostly just are self-contained. Is it sometimes easier to travel alone? Yes, it is. Sometimes it's faster and easier because, to be quite honest, sometimes some of you guys can be irritating, annoying, difficult, and so can I. But if we can move beyond our fears, beyond our selfishness, beyond the idea that we don't need other people, if we can move beyond that, then we'll have growth. Then transformation will happen, and we will truly know what Solomon is getting at when he says that 2 are better than 1. So I just want to challenge you as we close, don't settle for superficial. It's not enough. Most people these days settle for superficial. Get at deep meaning. And it won't be everybody that can be a part of that chord, but it should be somebody. Because you never know when you turn the corner and cancer shows up. You never know when you turn the corner and you're going to fall down and you can't get up. You never know when you're going to need somebody to have your back when nobody else does. So get about the business of cultivating those relationships, because without them, life is meaningless. It's like chasing the wind. You never catch it. And even though you accumulate all the things you thought would make you happy, when you get them, you have nobody to share it with. And that is a tragedy that Solomon is saying you must avoid. Let's pray. So Lord, as we listen to your word and we think about the things that we've heard today, we ask that you would help us just to honestly do an inventory about the nature of the relationships that we have. To ask ourselves if we're traveling alone, or do we have people that legitimately have our backs? that will be there when the 800-pound boulder falls on our arm and we can't get out. Help us to see and hear what you wanted us to see and hear today, and resolve to take the next step towards what it is that you want us to do. In Christ we pray. Amen. Would you stand with me?